If you do any digging into the Finnish Defence Forces, you'll discover that the country's full-time professional force is actually quite small. According to the organization's official website, the Finnish military employs approximately 12,000 persons in domestic duties during peacetime. From the 12,000, there are about 3,600 soldiers in the army. Although these official numbers are a few years old and things have grown a bit, it gives you a rough idea of the relatively small full-time force. Other full-time personnel include those in the Navy and Air Force, as well as civilians working across various branches of the country's military. We are well aware that a huge portion of our audience comes from the Nordics and are already familiar with how Finland's defence forces work and already know why the professional force is so small. However, we thought it might be interesting to explain things for those who don't know how things work in the country. So let's get started. Yes, the size of Finland's full-time professional defence force is quite small. Some 3,600 full-time soldiers in the army, that's equivalent to a single military brigade, which typically consists of 3,000 to 5,000 soldiers. But the numbers are, in a word, deceiving, and it all comes down to labelling and categorization, and how Finland does things differently. The label of a professional full-time member of the military means that this is a permanent salaried individual working on a contract, potentially having chosen service in the armed forces as a lifelong career. But alongside these members of the military are in fact thousands upon thousands of conscripts carrying out their mandatory service. And beyond conscripts actively training are hundreds of thousands of reservists who have already completed their mandatory service and are occasionally called up to complete refresher training. In fact, when it comes to the army alone, the official army page states that there are 18,400 conscripts who undergo training annually, and this is alongside another 18,400 reservists per year taking part in refresher training or refresher exercises. When including other branches of service, military training is provided annually for approximately 21,000 conscripts. Thus, the land force's wartime troop size, according to the official but out-of-date page, is 180,000 soldiers, although we're told that figure is well over 200,000 by now. When including all of the military's branches of service, Finland's wartime strength is close to 300,000 troops. At the same time, there are approximately 900,000 trained reservists in total, with the country aiming to have 1 million on the reserve registry by 2031. It's these additional 600,000 or so that would be called up to account for losses in wartime. This is the reservist military model, which itself fits within the country's broader total defense concept. Instead of building up a large, costly, full-time professional military, Finland has opted to keep its active duty forces small in peacetime while preparing much of Finnish society for war in one way or another. From our outsider perspective, this makes a lot of sense both in terms of wartime readiness and even economics. Rather than have a professional active duty force that might be 2 to 3 times larger, alongside a few million civilians who have zero experience, Finland instead trains much of Finnish society with basic military skills. From an economic point of view, these trained citizens are thus freed up to pursue civilian careers and contribute to the broader Finnish economy and workforce, which is quite sensible. So, how does it all actually work? Well, according to the Constitution of Finland, every Finnish citizen is obligated to participate in national defense. Every male Finnish citizen between 18 to 65 is liable for military service, and women can apply for military service on a voluntary basis. Interestingly, the upper age limit of 65 is a recent change, where the limit age for reserves was 50 for rank-and-file members and 60 for NCOs and officers. We're told that the age increase was implemented mostly due to little or no population growth, and even population decline. Thus, keeping the old numbers would have led to the size of the reserves shrinking. Anyway, a person liable for military service must complete either armed or unarmed military service or non-military, that is, civil service, and after completing military service, citizens are mustered out into the Finnish Defence Forces reserve. We don't want to get too deep into the details of conscription and being placed in the military reserve, but the mandatory military service takes 165, 255, or 347 days, essentially 6, 9, or 12 months. While things change from year to year, it's said that approximately 43% of conscripts serve for 347 days, some 14% for 255 days, and 43% for 165 days. We're told by some Finns that the percentage of those who serve the longest term of 347 days has actually been increasing in recent years and is expected to increase in future. Conscripts being trained for rank-and-file tasks serve for 165 days, and those trained for rank-and-file tasks requiring special competence, as well as those undertaking unarmed service, serve for 255 days. A good example of rank-and-file roles with special competence would be military police or roles in IT or media conscripts. And then conscripts being trained as reserve officers, non-commissioned officers, and for most demanding rank-and-file special tasks, serve for 347 days. Conscripts are selected for various training programs based on the needs of the Finnish Defence Forces, while selections account for individual willingness and suitability, as well as the results of instructor and peer evaluations. We're told by our Finnish contributors that the main factor into deciding where conscripts serve is mostly dictated by where they live. Additionally, we're told that if you express a desire to serve in a particular branch of service, you will most likely be granted your choice. Conscripts receive the same basic training regardless of the branch they serve in. It's said that the quality of the training received is very high and on par with professional salaried militaries in different NATO countries. And while that information comes from sources that might be a little biased, it's quite believable given the high reputation Finnish reservists have earned for themselves among allies. Again, as we noted earlier in this video, after military service is completed, conscripts and female volunteers are mustered out into the reserve. The rank and file remain in the reserve until they turn 65, and it's said that they will receive a maximum of 80 or 150 days of refresher training during their reservist time. Officers and non-commissioned officers also remain in the reserve until they turn 65, but it's a maximum of 200 days of refresher training for these individuals. But on this topic, we've been told that it's actually extremely rare for people to have refresher training even close to those stated amounts. Those amounts are mostly hit by Special Forces troops that train often, whereas a simple rank-and-file reservist might get called in for 1 or 2 weeks of refresher training during their entire time in the reserves. There are actually 2 types of refresher training. There's the normal mandatory training, or kertausharjoitus, which reservists are legally obligated to attend, or else find an acceptable exemption. And then there's voluntary refresher training, or vapaaehtoinen harjoitus, where reservists may receive an invitation but are not obligated to attend. One thing viewers may find interesting is that Sweden has had a similar military system entirely based on a universal national military service. Going by the name allmän värnplikt, which literally means universal duty to defend, the Swedish policy was in effect between 1901 and 2010. It too saw a small and limited professional force and focused on a system of compulsory military service for a fixed number of new recruits each year. And so, like Finland, the peacetime organization was small. In numbers, it was only 10 to 15% of the wartime force size. In 2010, this was replaced with an all-volunteer system with soldiers serving on a contractual employment basis. However, as stated by Swedish Defence Minister at the time, Peter Hultqvist, we saw that our units could not be filled on a voluntary basis. A decision had to be taken to complement the volunteer system, which is why we are reactivating conscription. This was a move taken in 2017 and will probably be something to discuss further in a video of its own in the future. But, okay, before straying too far into Swedish territory, let's bring it back to Finland, which has held on to this conscription and reservist-based system for essentially its entire existence as a nation. Conscription began late in the 19th century, but was briefly disrupted during periods of Russian rule. An independent Finland in 1919 passed a new conscription law to form the basis of its new army. The Soviet Union's invasion of Finland in 1939 was a clear reminder of the need for conscription and a total defense model. The USSR did manage to seize territory but never managed to capture the whole country. But as you can see, a somewhat militarized Finnish society has been the norm for over 100 years. Because of this, it's simply normal for every male citizen to complete military training at or around the age of 18. We're told that Finnish people view the defense forces, conscription and reservist duties as a generally positive thing and something to be respected, whilst also being a source of national pride. Generally speaking, it's said that Finns have very high morale and a high desire to defend their country, with the most recent polls showing that 78% of the population are willing to defend their country in case of an armed conflict. Living next to the occasionally, or perhaps oftentimes, aggressive neighbour that is Russia has indeed prompted Finland to prepare and educate its entire society on defence, and this includes civilians. As highlighted by Euronews, the country has a network of more than 50,000 underground shelters that can accommodate everyone in the country of 5.6 million. While Euronews incorrectly reports that every home in Finland is required to have an emergency stockpile of food, fuel and water for each individual for 72 hours in the case of an attack, we're told that it's not actually a requirement. Rather, it's something that is advised and generally expected, with no one actually checking or enforcing such a policy. Additionally, it's said that having sufficient cash reserves is advised in case the banking system fails. But going back to the country's military and trying to bring everything full circle, this is precisely why many units of the Finnish Defence Forces, from the Jaeger Brigade in the north to the Guard Jaeger Regiment in the south, state that their main focus is training, the annual training of conscripts to be precise, in addition to refresher training for reservists. And so, because of this model, the ability to report on unit size is a little more difficult when compared to reporting on professional units in other countries. It's definitely not exactly a model that North Americans or even half of Europe would be familiar with. But for Finland, it's simply the way things are done. What do you think of the Finnish Defence Forces' way of doing things? Let us know by leaving a comment. And finally, a huge thank you to all the Finns who answered our call and reviewed our script and provided us with more accurate and up-to-date information. To all of you who helped, kiitos.